Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. Scotland is one of the first countries in the world to stump up cash for loss and damage caused by climate change in poorer countries. When torrential rains came to the village of Mamboundou in Malawi, people's homes were washed away, but that was not the worst of it. The floodwaters were infested with crocodiles, children were carried away by them, it was terrifying. Eventually in 2015, the villagers couldn't take any more and moved their entire community to higher ground. Then the new village began to flood too. Malawi in southern Africa has been hit hard by the effects of climate change, but it's one of the poorest countries in the world and struggles to pay for measures needed to repair the damage. That's where the Scottish Government has stepped in, promoting the notion that rich nations should help pay for the damage from climate change in less developed countries. At the COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow, it committed £2 million for a loss and damage scheme, a world first. A further £5 million is promised from April. In November at COP27 in Egypt, other world leaders finally agreed they would follow that example. In Mamboundou, some of the money is being used to create flood defences in the new settlement uphill. Village Chief Isaac Mamboundou said he had no choice but to lead his people to safer ground. He said people tried to build good houses, but the water destroyed them. Even our children were carried away by the water. Even the crocodiles that are found in the river would come and attack the people. So when we saw this, we decided to move higher grounds. However, the move has not been popular with everyone. Dorike Mitiyashi has already returned to the original village because the farmland is more fertile. She said the new settlement was affected by the same flooding as they had run away from. So what do we do? She asked. It is estimated about 80% of people in Malawi live and work off the land, and the southern region is a patchwork of small plots, mainly growing maize. It is an existence of extreme poverty, with many rural communities having no access to electricity and 3.8 million people at risk of food insecurity, according to the World Food Programme. The Scottish Government's money is being spent in Malawi by organisations such as SCAIF, the Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. It identified 6 villages where the impacts from climate change have been significant. Some of the 500,000 SCAIF has been allocated is being spent rebuilding the Mapatso preschool in Nadagu, which was originally constructed by the Roger Federer Foundation and Action Aid. When the rains came from Tropical Storm Anna and Cyclone Gome in early 2022, the buildings were lost and teaching was halted as the school was turned into a makeshift camp for the thousands whose homes were lost. Teacher Hannah Souza says those from the lower grounds running away from the water came to camp here and they disturbed the learning process. We were unable to run our school because of the people that had come to camp here. Teaching was very difficult. That's the challenge we faced. The school's kitchens were destroyed and the children have been having to eat their breakfast porridge on the ground using trees for shade. But the loss and damage cash is now being used to rebuild those parts of the school which were destroyed. Ben Wilson, advocacy manager at SCAIF, says the money is different from the type of humanitarian aid which follows a major disaster. He says often that aid and those aid workers then leave because they can go on to the next disaster and there always is a next disaster. This money is coming in at a later stage when the communities have already received that immediate support, but it's giving them what they need to build back, to build that resilience, but also to get their lives back on track. Some of the money is being used to protect a cemetery in the village of Mirbenje, where graves are frequently lifted and carried off by floodwaters. Village leaders had to ask neighbouring communities for space in their graveyards to bury the dead. Saturated ground means it is a long time after the floods have gone before they are able to dig again. Group village head Lucy Bangta Mirbenje says when the water comes, the tombstones are underwater. Even when the water has receded and we have a funeral, just by digging a little bit, the water level is so high. That's why we go ask for other graveyards, because we can't bury the dead in the water, she says. The climate has really changed. If we talk about past flooding, our graveyard was not affected. There was no water in our graveyard.